Dixon competition created about 5 years ago opportunity for local chefs throughout the region to showcase their talents in a competitive sort of competition environment where each team is provided sort of a menu item, a market basket of different sort of foodstuffs, and they have to create an appetizer, an entree, and dessert. There are three judges, and those judges will sort of be very sort of transparent about
Right.
what they like and what they don't like. But it's done in a format which I like, which is to build the chef up
Okay.
and not tear them down.
Mhm.
That's really important to me if I want to participate. And
And you want to win.
and you want
And you wanna win.
Yeah. So historically, there has not been representation out of Prince George's County in these competitions. So. I decided
You're
based
it.
off of some information that this is something I want to do. So so I compete on Tuesday, July 14th. Tuesday, July 14th. Yeah.
Okay, Tuesday, July 14th. Where can people go? Two things. One, to get more information about you.
Okay. So the website for Cafe Rue is thecaferu.com. So TheCaferue.com. Thecaferu.com.
And what's the address?
11120 Baltimore Avenue,
Mhm.
Beltsville, Maryland. I tell people it's down the street from the IKEA, right on the Beltway.
Good
Right down
one.
the
Okay,
street. Yeah,
great.
because everybody knows that
Yeah,
IKEA.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then the competition.
So the competition, I believe it's Mason Dixon,
MasterChef.
MasterChef. Yeah, MasterChef.com. It's in Baltimore. It takes place Mondays and Tuesdays, and it's spread out over the summer. But you can get all the bracket information there. Purchase tickets. There's two styles you can do as a person who just goes and views for one price, and then if you want to actually participate and judge and actually taste the food,
Mhm.
then there's another price. So there's a lot of ways to get involved and participate in that. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm excited.
What's the
I'm
dish
excited.
that you're going to be doing?
So I am my competition date is focused on comfort food, which is my wheelhouse. So I don't want to share publicly what I'm doing, but
Tell.
again, it's appetizer, entree, dessert.
Okay.
I'll just say that I'm gonna take it back home to stuff that I grew up eating. What my grandmother cooked, my mom cooked. I mean, it's comfort food, and for me, comfort food is the stuff that when I was in bed and I can smell things being cooked in the morning.
That's that food that heals,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'm taking it back to the stuff that brings back memories of people in my life who I care dearly about. And I'm just going to hopefully prepare that in a way that the judges can also say, wow, this is really good. There's a story behind it and it tastes good. So yeah.
When we were talking earlier, what I love about you is that the DMV is a food desert,
Mhm.
which is so sad because there's so much that's going here, politically,
Sure.
so much money coming in, even in Prince George's County, but hunger is such a huge
Exactly.
issue,
Exactly.
So what do you think when you think of that issue of this area being a food desert and then your love of food? Is there any type of philanthropic side
Sure.
to what you're doing?
So my outreach is I'm really big on mentorship. So the way I approach that is if I can teach kids through cooking demonstrations or just through conversations of how to go into the pantry and make dishes out of things that they may have, regardless of how much or little it is, then that's sort of my approach. Just talking to high school students, allowing them to come into Cafe Rue and see what it is through internships of what I do. I often will give food to different organizations. We do go out and feed the homeless occasionally
Great.
when the opportunity presents itself. But I'm really big on just educating people of how to eat healthier and how to use what it is they have.
Which is so important, especially for our
Mhm.
community when you talk
Mhm.
about the health side of it.
What they can grow in their own yard, right?
Right.
Growing kale, growing tomatoes, and how to make those tomatoes be marinara sauce, fried green tomatoes, tomato salad. I mean, how to use just the stuff you have and get creative. I mean, that's what I had to do when I was a kid,
Absolutely.
right? I watched my mom do that, right?
Wow. I was having a discussion with someone about organic food.
Yeah, sure.
So, what are your thoughts when it comes to when people, and I want to give people some tips when they're buying groceries. And people really will argue about whether you should buy organic, is it really organic, does it really make a difference, and things like that. How do you approach that?
So for me in my household, we approach organic when we can with any proteins.
Okay.
So most proteins we try to do all organic. And then fruits and vegetables that are thin skinned. So for example, bananas we may not buy organic, but
tomatoes.
strawberries, tomatoes, blueberries, we will do organic. just because of pesticides and the way they're sprayed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if there's a husk or something on it, like onions or something, then, I mean, that's just how we approach it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of scientific behind that for us. It's just our
Right,
approach to
absolutely.
it. So yeah, organic is definitely a thing that in my household we're into, and I try to let that translate into the restaurant and places where it makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the support like when you decided to open up your restaurant in Prince George's County?
Yeah, so I'd say that it's getting better. Some of the bridges are being built, but initially it was a challenge, just from an infrastructure perspective of how to get open, having one resource to just learn everything I need to do to open up the business.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't exist, but I feel like I've started to make connections with the EDC, started to make connections with people in the health department, and really create those sort of relationships to say, hey, I want to be a resource to help other people who may have a food truck and want to go to that next level of a brick and mortar, or people who are out of the region, because I travel a lot and people are always looking to expand. But it needs to be a more seamless process of how do I do this. I started my truck actually in Montgomery County, and then decided to have a brick and mortar in Prince George's County. And so I can compare my process.
How do you, I mean...
Yeah, so when I started my food truck, I went to one site, read everything I needed to do, and followed those steps, and it was done.
Right.
When I opened my restaurant and I called, 311 and tried to just get some understanding, there was not a centralized place
Really?
to just get all the information.
Mm-hmm.
The information was there, but it was sort of disjointed.
Okay.
And because I'm persistent and a self-advocate,
I know that's right.
then, it saved myself a lot of money just because there were some overlapping things that would have, things that maybe were said I need to do that I didn't need to do. All that being said, 2.5 years in, I've made a lot of relationships with the, Chamber of Commerce and the EDC
Mm-hmm.
and just people because it's a small group, right?
Right.
And I think that I've maybe proven that I'm committed to the county. I'm committed to not just building my brand, but helping the region grow. And if Prince George's County wants to be a world-class destination as it relates to attracting millennials, then they're going to have to really, continue to develop that infrastructure around sort of food service. And I believe that I finally made the right connections, people who are receptive to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
Nice. You talk about the food trucks. It's just been like an explosion in the past, several years with food trucks.
Right.
And I grew up in DC, so it was like a handful of,
Right.
the Florida Avenue Grill. We
Yep.
always had bins.
Yeah.
It was like maybe a handful of spots that you just knew they were really good.
Right.
And so when food trucks came on the scene, I'm not gonna lie, I was like,
Yeah.
how is this gonna be? So, the fact that you were talking, what was on your food truck? Was it the same thing as
So
Cafe Root?
when I started the food truck, it was chicken and waffles, and then a lot of sweet waffles, chocolate chip, red velvet, very simple jumbo lump crab cake and waffles.
Oh my gosh.
But very just simple, waffle being used as a bread for sandwiches. That was the idea. And then I just expanded on that in Cafe Root. So my take on the food trucks in the region food trucks are a great way for a person who's interested in entering the food service industry without having the commitment of signing a lease for 5 or 10 years, without having to bring on a lot of staff. The upfront capital is just a lot less expensive, and it can really, vet the individual of, is this something I really want to do? Because it's hard work,
Right.
I mean, you're cooking food in one place, having to sort of pack that up and put it on your truck and then go out and try to hang a sign on and say, hey, buy some food from me, right?
But the overhead is different.
The overhead can typically be a lot less expensive, so it's a good way to get in. And in my sort of experience, the food truck scene across the country sort of was right around the time where the downturn happened. A lot of people were laid off. Some of these people were getting severance packages or tapping into their retirements and saying, I've always wanted to do something in food.
Mm-hmm.
I'm unemployed. Now, not everyone, but I know a lot of these stories where people say, I'm going to try it.
Right.
So they took 30, 40 grand and just kind of jumped in. And, some of those people are still kind of making it happen.
Is that on average how much people put in when they're going that route?
You can get in for that route. I mean, you can spend a lot more. I spent a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really committed, and I had the capital to I had a goal of what I was trying to do, and the food truck was the beginning of that process.
Right.
Like, I knew I wanted to go to school. I knew I wanted a brick and mortar. But yeah, if you just want to get in, then, you can find trucks during the winter when people are deciding to do something else. for sale. You know, it's like buying a motorcycle in the winter. You know, you can always do that. You know, so yeah, it's a good industry, and it's a good way to find out if it's something you want to do with the menu, working on your menu, because typically a food truck will not have the same menu options as a restaurant. It's a lot reduced. So you can figure out what's your signature dish and then roll that. If you're successful, roll that into multiple trucks. You can go that route, or you can go into, you know, take that signature dish and then build a restaurant around that dish, which is what I did. But some people, again, go the route of, you know, I'm going to have 5 trucks. And, you know, they're very successful with that. What
advice would you give someone coming in if they want to go that brick and mortar route?
I'd say, you know, capital, right? Make sure that, you know, you have the operating costs, not just to sign a lease, but you can really look at running that business for maybe 6 months to a year without a profit. A lot of restaurants, you know, people say, you know, restaurants go out of business all the time. You know, sometimes it's not about the food, it's not about the service. They just don't have the operating capital to get the business up and running long enough to whereas, you know, the customers are supporting, you know, the business. So my advice is maybe if you're looking at space, maybe look at a smaller space, maybe look at a space that will allow you to grow and build a brand, as opposed to going to the most expensive, highly trafficked place, but you have to you have to hit the ground running.
Right.
And if you don't, then you're done, right? So Prince George's County there's a lot of available real estate there, and there's a lot of sort of need. So I just felt like it just made perfect sense to me. I mean, the shopping center that I went into needed something to come in and really be different, right? And the clientele, you know, again, like I said, when I was on my truck, I do events in DC, and I just started asking people, hey, where do you live? And people are like, oh, I live in Laurel, or I live in Greenbelt, or I live in Hyattsville, or I live, you know, and I'm like, wow, like really, you're in DC at this event buying food, but you live in these places?
Right, and so I wanted to talk about that. Exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did, right? Yeah.
So when you were talking to people, and this is important because if you are listening to this, and like me, a lot of people in Maryland, you spend time in DC, and you don't reinvest in your own county. Do you get frustrated when you run into maybe other chefs and you're like, come on over to this side, or people have this residents have this view of eating out in Prince George's County? Because you're like, okay, where can we go?
There is a perception, right?
Yeah.
And I like to say, you know, a lack of knowledge of just sort of what the options are. I mean, even if you look, so I'm on Baltimore Avenue, Route 1. I mean, some of the best Korean restaurants, some of the best Vietnamese restaurants, Greek, you know, are right there on Route 1. But people will go through Beltsville or College Park trying to get to the Beltway to get on,
U Street or
just to get on, and they're passing restaurants that are phenomenal.
Wow.
They may not have the glitz and glam that some of those, you know, sort of district locations will have. But I also think it's about Prince George's County building those environments that are destinations where people, because sometimes when you go to U Street, you can say, I went to U Street. Right. It's a thing, right? It's a Friday night, we're going to U Street, and then we'll eat somewhere, right? So how does Prince George's County foster those neighborhoods, right? So like, you know, what's going on down in Hyattsville in the Art District, what I'm trying to create where I'm at in Beltsville is a destination location where it's a thing, right? And I think it takes chefs really sort of creating an atmosphere that's not just the food, where a person wants to come in and say, you know what, I can spend a few hours here because the environment is conducive to that.
Nice.
And it's not just a place that's food. Chefs outside of the area, I think that they want to kind of see the success stories first. So they're like, build it and let's see some success, and then we'll come.
Then we will come.
And yeah, and that's kind of it, right? So that's why I said, you know what, I want to be on the ground floor. I mean, there are people who have been doing it before me, but I said I want to be a part of that change and say, hey, you know what, I started with a truck, then I opened up a place in Prince George's County. It was successful. So if you come, there's a good chance that, you know, there's a scene happening now that you can also become a part of. And I think chefs are starting to take a look. You know, when you look at National Harbor and some of the places that are going in there, I mean, there's just a lot of opportunity. And the biggest thing is there's real estate available that's affordable, right? To be an incubator, you know, I mean, granted, you know, we can always use chains and stuff like that. But when we talk about independents, people who have locations, maybe their first place and they're looking for a second location, or startups, you know, it's always about, you know, that good rent, that lease making sense for your business to grow. And I feel like Prince George's County just has that. they just have it. And you look at U Street. I mean, there might be space available, but can you pay that for a year without making money? I mean, you need deep pockets to do that.
Absolutely.
And Prince George's County just gives you that sort of incubator style, environment, which I like. I think it helps. And with the whole millennial thing.
I was going to say that coming up. I mean, that's kind of like a different set of taste buds, also.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's experience, right?
Right.
So millennials are looking for. They want to feel like they're discovering something that's new. It's a niche. And if everybody knows about it, then that's not their thing. They're looking, they want to be the one to go to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and let their followers know this is what I discovered.
Social media's changed the
it
can make or break you.
Literally. I feel like Cafe Rue helps me because I have decent Yelp reviews. People, will go out and like Greenbelt, they have their own neighborhood Facebook page and they're writing positive reviews about it and it helps. I think that what I've tried to do in an approach of attracting millennials is, again, create an environment that has service, that has interesting food, because there's still people who've never heard of chicken and waffles. So as long as that exists, then I have a space, right?
Right.
But also, I just received my beer license, and I've added, I'm really into cider culture, hard ciders.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so cider, apple cider, right? Most people know the sparkling ciders, Martinelli's or whatever.
Right.
Hard cider, same idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? So, hard ciders are basically that with alcohol in it.
Mm-hmm.
Europe, it's a big deal. There's a culture behind that, and I feel like in the U.S. we're growing. It's the fastest growing category in the beer sort of spectrum.
Is it really?
It's cider, yeah. So, you'll see, I think it's Johnny Appleseed, Angry Orchard.
Good, yeah.
So it's out there. So those are like the mass-produced ones, and they have a space, right? They tend to be sweeter. I'm trying to create an environment where you can come and get bottles of cider, like a 750, like a wine bottle. And I have ciders out of Spain. I have ciders out of France. I'm trying to expose people to sort of what ciders can be from really sweet to really dry, right? Just like you would think about wine as being like an ice wine or Riesling or something just bone dry.
Right.
You can get the same complexities with cider. Cider aged in tequila barrels, cider aged in wine barrels, all kinds of stuff. So most places...
I'm so hungry right now.
Yeah. So most places are just starting to sort of put one or two ciders on their menu. And I just said, you know what? The same way I created chicken and waffles as a thing, I'm just going to have 13, 14 ciders on my menu. And, and try to educate people about it, right? And that's what we're trying to do.
How do you think the palate, or do you think there's a big difference between the palate here as Americans and then versus like outside of the country?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are we underdeveloped in our
Yeah, so I feel like, so that starts with like kids, right? And I feel like in other countries, and this is a very sort of broad brush,
right?
Not individualized to the household, but I feel like as a kid, in this country, we tend to like get kids what they want. So if they want like, chicken nuggets or that's what we give them. Whereas I feel like when I was in Germany and I saw people with their like babies, they were feeding them the same stuff that they were eating. So if they were eating, roasted duck, then that's what they fed their kids.
Oh, wow.
If they were eating, truffles and whatever, that's what they were giving their kids. That's just, they were eating off the same plates. And I felt like it wasn't like a separate kind of, here's the kid meal and then here's our meal. It was all the same thing. I feel like the palate is changing because in our country because the sort of emergence of cooking shows, right? Like cooking shows have been running now for probably, where it's a part of the culture for like about 10 years, where, Master Chef competitions and the Ramsay and all these different shows, and now people are interested in food and creativity, and then they're forcing their neighborhood restaurants to start getting better.
Right.
And then the neighborhood restaurants are bringing in other ingredients, so they're more farm to table. So it's a slow process, but I feel like it's definitely happening. So where people are expecting, okay, so I don't want French fries out of a bag now. I want you to like cut the fries. I want them fresh, or they're asking the owner or the server. So where did these greens in my salad come from?
Absolutely.
Like were they local? Did they come from some huge agriculture, farm or whatever that I don't even know where it's at, and it's industrialized. And again, when customers start demanding that, then owners have to respond or go out of business, right? So I feel like the palate is definitely changing because the exposure, the information is out there, and it's permeated into the culture. Where like now, food is a big part of our culture, and as long as that happens, people are going to demand, things either be organic or locally sourced, or, you know, the meat that we have on the menu, you know, how was that animal treated?
Right.
Right? You know, because that's going to affect it. I mean, it's true though, right? It affects the taste. So again, as long as customers are pushing the servers and the servers are pushing the managers or the owners, then it'll just keep getting better and better.
So what is the responsibility, you know, you talked about that, but any other responsibility of the consumer when they're going out and eating?
So spend your money at a place that you support the vision of the restaurant. You support what it is they're sort of, you know, getting. I mean, food is something that I like to think that what I do at Cafe Rue is something that a person can do at home. People can cook at home. When people choose to spend their hard-earned money in a restaurant, it's more than just providing substance for their body. It's a convenience. It's an experience. And I feel like sometimes people don't even think about they're spending their disposable income when they walk into
Absolutely. And
a
some
Chipotle,
restaurants don't respect
and
your
some
dollar.
restaurants don't care, right?
Right.
So
you'll come anyway.
So that's why I say be very sort of choosy about where you spend your money, right? If you go into a restaurant and they treat you poorly, then the best thing you can do is just not support that place. Or maybe educate that restaurant on what you didn't like about it. I mean, as a restaurant owner, as a chef, it pains me sometimes to read reviews, but the only way I'm going to get better is to understand, once I get outside of myself, what didn't they like and what's reasonable to change, because they're spending their money in my place, right? Because they don't have to. Again, they can do this stuff at home.
Right.
I'm not creating something that's so complex they can't do themselves. So for me, customers realizing that, hey, this is their money that they work for, and getting behind restaurants that are doing philanthropic things in the neighborhood. Restaurants
That's really big for millennials.
focused.
They are connected to cause, from their jobs, to where they eat, to where they hang out, which is good, which would be great for Prince George's County because it helps to bring in more money. When you're talking about going into a restaurant, figuring out whether are you getting it from local farmers, where it's coming from, it's helping to put money back into that community.
So customers asking that, right? I mean, where did this come from?
Right.
Right? Did you make this in-house, or is this... So my big thing is, I have a sweet tooth. I'm really into sweets. But one of the questions I always ask when I'm in a restaurant is, were the desserts made here? Not that a dessert can't be made somewhere else and still be phenomenal. I just like to know, is there a pastry chef in the back who their job is to create these pastries or whatever on site, right? That's kind of my thing. So whatever your passion is, if you're into locally sourced, then maybe you go to restaurants that do that.
Nice.
If you're into organic, then support restaurants that are doing that, because it'll help grow that space. So as a consumer, really understand what it is you're into, and then support places that, you know, do that, and don't support places that don't. And I hate to say, I mean, it's odd for me to say that as an owner, because I'm in business to sell food, but again, I still want customers to come because they really support what it is I'm doing. Because I spend my money that I make at places that I support what they're doing, and that keeps the cycle going. And I really put emphasis on not spending money in places that are doing things that you don't support just because it's quick or it's it's available, right? Because there's too many businesses that are in the food service and they don't really care about the quality of the food. They don't really care about the customer. They're just providing a service, and that's not really helping anybody.
Right. Are there any frustrations that you have as an African American male in this industry? I'm sure it's tough.
Absolutely, yeah. So getting outside the box of, I only cook soul food, or everything that I cook is fried.
Right.
Or, I mean, that's probably when I do catering, I'm always explaining to people. So I do have culinary training, So I went to l'Académie des Cuisines out in Gaithersburg, participated in a 8-month sort of program. So because I have that knowledge on French cuisine, I feel like a lot of time that's checked at the door when a person asks me sort of, what is it I do, or when they start assuming what it is I do. And that's kind of frustrating.
Right.
And that's just not even here, anywhere. As an African-American chef, it's just not always, assumed that you can do a lot more than, macaroni and cheese. And, even though I do macaroni and cheese and fried chicken, my range, we talked about it earlier, one of the things I'm doing in the summer is, hickory smoked peaches with baby arugula, a little bit of crispy bacon, truffle glaze, a little extra virgin olive oil. It's a small plate appetizer, and people really like that. Those are the things I'm into, as well as the fried chicken, right?
We can have that with side of fried chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
4th of July, give us like quick something that we can do, whether it's we grilling it or it's small side. What's a good twist on the classic 4th of July cookout meal that you can just put out for people this year?
Yeah, so I'm really big on like fruit with like meats, right? So
Okay.
like it's not new, but like grilling pineapples, grilling watermelons.
I've always wanted to grill watermelon.
Yeah, so like grilling watermelons. So this year I'm doing smoked peaches. Last year I was doing smoked watermelon salads with hard Gruyere cheese.
So what do? You just slice it, throw
slice-
it on there?
So I actually have a tool which you can get at Williams-Sonoma called a smoking gun, and
Okay.
it's basically you put wood chips in a little bowl, light it on, just light it, and it just is a fan and it blows smoke to whatever you want. And it's a really cool tool to smoke like kale, to smoke like different things. So anyway,
Really?
I use that tool to smoke watermelon, and that's how I smoke the peaches as well. So things that are quick and easy to do for me is cooking meats that or cuts of meats that are not as common, right? So everybody knows the ribeyes or the T-bone steaks.
So what we're gonna try this year?
Yeah, so I think like if you can get into like maybe duck,
Really?
lamb.
Lamb, love lamb.
Yeah, grilling lamb low and slow or smoking lamb. If you can get into sort of whole fish. So a couple weeks ago, I was down in Annapolis and I had my smoker down there with me, and I smoked a couple of bluefish, whole bluefish. Just literally, I bought the fish at Whole Foods because for me personally, rubbed it with salt, nothing else but salt.
Nothing else but salt?
Salt, low and slow for like an hour and a half. And the salt allows the skin just pulls right off.
Really?
And phenomenal, right? And I can eat that cold. I can eat it hot. You can put it on top of a salad. You can put it with a starch like rice or some type of pasta or whatever. So I'm really big on things that are super simple and getting to the essence of what the real flavor is.
What's the number one thing people do wrong in dealing with meat?
Cooking it too fast or high heat.
Really?
Yeah. So people know, they hear it low and slow, but it's real, right? So like if I'm cooking a pork butt, then if I can cook it at like 225, 235 for like 8-9 hours.
This is a microwave generation.
Yeah, so the meat will like fall apart.
Right.
But if I'm trying to cook it really quickly, then the meat's gonna seize up, it's gonna get real tough. So low and slow. Any protein, if you can cook it low and slow, then that's how you get that tender, juicy, type of cuisine. So behind the movement of slow food is, going into a restaurant and then making things when you order it, and it takes a little bit longer, but they're not taking it off a hot plate, or they're not like it's made when you order it. It's slow food, right?
Okay.
Or making dishes that just take time, right?
Okay, we're coming to the end, but I have another one.
Sure.
Salt is really big, and we're trying to get people to put that down. So I'm taking the salt out of my diet. Give me 2 spices I can put in.
I like cumin a lot.
I love cumin.
Yeah, I like cumin a lot. I like nutmeg in savory dishes.
Really?
So like cream spinach with a nutmeg and a little mustard.
That's like is that more Indian?
Yeah, it could be. I knew growing up, nutmeg was like, French toast and, apple pie.
Right.
But,
oatmeal.
Yeah, but using it in more of a savory dish just to give it that, because again, nutmeg by itself is not sweet.
Okay.
Right? So, I like to use nutmeg a lot, and I like to use cumin. And a little trick is to toast it off before you actually put it in whatever you're going to do, which is just taking a pan, putting on low heat, and literally put in the spice powder, or however you're, right in a pan, and just toast it for a minute or two. Low heat again, but heating it up brings out the flavor a little more, and adds a few more complexity to the flavor, and then put that in. So like if I'm doing a cream spinach, that nutmeg, it just takes it from like a 10 to a 20. Seriously.
Okay, gonna try
Seriously.
that. And then last one. What's the number one herb? Always buy fresh, never buy dry.
Rosemary.
Really?
Yeah. So like I make fresh pasta, and I like I grew up eating a lot of like pasta Alfredo or whatever. So for the wife, last week I made a fettuccine Alfredo with fresh pasta, but I infused the pasta with rosemary. like fresh rosemary. And again, I'm really big on flavors that linger a little bit after you eat it. So like, some people will say wine or beer, it's flat, like it just doesn't have that oomph to it. So for me, if I eat a meal and like after I take that last bite, I don't have any residual like garlic taste or what? Yeah, me too. So I feel like it was just a flat meal. I like to create dishes that like a few minutes after you eat it, you're like, okay, I need to go get the Listerine now because I need to go talk to somebody. But that's for me showing that there was some flavor in that food. So like that rosemary infused, and it's literally just taking, Alfredo sauce is basically just, Parmigiano Reggiano, Parmesan out of Italy, butter and cream. That's basic, and then the pasta.
Right.
Letting that cream sort of treating the rosemary as if it were a tea bag and letting it steep in the cream on low, like you do hot water in a tea bag. Same idea, but with fresh cut rosemary. I grow rosemary, throw a couple sprigs in that cream and just let it hang out while you're cooking your pasta for 8 or 10 minutes, and then use that cream to put your cheese and your butter in. Something that simple will revolutionize the flavor of that dish. So you don't want the dry rosemary it's just not the same. Not the same.
Oh, first of all, I'm so hungry. I'm so excited. I can't wait to cook out this weekend. Chef Cole Whaley, please visit restaurant Cafe Rue, 12345 Beltsville, Maryland, 20772. Good luck to you with this Mason-Dixon Master Chef competition.
Yeah, thank you. Come check it out if you can.
Absolutely, and I definitely, want to tell our audience to support this restaurant, especially those who live in Prince George's County. And I'm in Prince George's County. We've got to do this. I really want the town to turn into a big foodie county.
It's happening.
So, with restaurants like Cafe Root and what you're doing outside of that, the mentoring program, you've got a great story. So I just want to thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to leave with our audience?
Well, so 4th of July, protein, low and slow. Remember that.
Low and slow. That's how I'm doing the rest of 2015.
That's my thing, low and slow.
Low and slow.
Yeah, no, seriously. It's low and slow. Guys, don't be out there with the...
Be patient.
That's
the problem.
Patience. Don't be out there with the lighter fluid trying to blow up the house. Low and slow.
So you know what? I wasn't going to ask another one, but people, it's always like charcoal or gas. Which one do you?
So I'm purist, right? So I am into lump. So Royal, there's a company that it's 100% natural charcoal, just lump charcoal.
Charcoal, okay.
No chemicals or whatever. And gas is. It's quick and easy if you just want something, but I want that. I want that
just ready to
flavor.
Start a revolution.
Yeah, I want that flavor. So but low and slow. Seriously,
low
and slow. Any proteins on the grill,
Love it.
And slow. Take the time and just make it an event, right? So if you're going to cook some food, if you're going to go through all the work of buying meat, and you're going to go through the work of cleaning the grill and getting the charcoal ready, and if you're going to go through all that, then spend a couple hours and actually create a dish that is gonna really, touch your soul, and you put the time into it. If you cook something in 15 minutes, that's just quick, whatever.
Right.
But if you tell people it took me 9 hours, it took me 8 hours. When
I
people
prepped
come
last
in,
night and let it soak over.
When people come in and they get the pulled pork and cornbread waffle, I tell them, it's an 8-9 hour process to do this. That means something. You know what I mean?
I gotta shut this down. Thank you so much, Chef Cole, for coming in. To our audience, thanks for tuning in to another edition of this Community Affairs Show here at Radio 1 DC Stations. I've enjoyed being your host. Have a happy 4th of July. Until next week, be safe. So I did it way